Can you learn Spanish fluently only using Duolingo? This is a question that my students ask me all the time. So, can you? Let's find out. Now, this is kind of tough because I feel like we as Spanish learners have different definitions of what fluency is. For some of us, fluency is just being able to use the language on a basic day-to-day basis. How to order food, how to ask directions, things like that. But for some of us, fluency is speaking the language perfectly, knowing how to say anything at any time instantly. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to say that fluency is pretty much being able to say anything you want, whenever you want. We'll also go off this dictionary definition of capable of using a language easily and accurately. Now, many of us language learners love using Duolingo because it's free. The lessons are quick. But how effective are these lessons actually? I have Duolingo here, and they've updated their kind of interface since I used to use Duolingo. But I used to use Duolingo as a supplement to my language learning when I was taking Spanish classes in high school. Duolingo has gotten a lot better since when I first started using it. One of the coolest new features that Duolingo has added is the stories feature. Now, this isn't available for all languages, but it is available for Spanish. So if I come in here and I go to stories, they have all of these stories here. And we can go in, let's say a new sport, for example, un nuevo deporte. Let's turn the volume up here.
Eddie y Junior están en una tienda.
Okay, so it goes quite slow. I can hit continue, I
¿Quieres
can keep
practicar
going.
un nuevo deporte? ¡Qué bueno!
Okay, so it's fantastic, right? These stories are fantastic, and they're a great way to be seeing the language and listening to the language. Reading is one of the best ways to improve your Spanish. I mean, I remember when I first started learning Spanish and I would be texting my friends in Spanish all the time, my Spanish started to improve a lot. First of all, I had to write out the things that I was saying so I could actually see the language and kind of, okay, this is how you say that. This is how you formulate that. But it forced me to have to look up new words that I didn't know how to say. Oh gosh, how do you say bag? Okay, right, bolsa. Okay, so that's right, fantastic. I love this stories feature. I think it's fantastic. Now, if we go into, you can review previous mistakes that you've made. I think that's also fantastic. How do we learn Spanish more effectively? By looking at our mistakes. Duolingo does a fantastic job at this. I haven't learned Spanish on Duolingo in a long time, so I don't have any mistakes to review. We also have listening. Now, in order to listen, this is kind of the super Duolingo feature. So as you can see, they have personal practice, unlimited hearts, blah, 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 no ads. So listening and speaking. This, unfortunately, is something that Duolingo might not be the best for, and that is listening and speaking. The real best way to learn Spanish is by speaking and listening to real people in real time. That is something that Duolingo is just not going to be able to do, and for that reason, you probably can't become fluent only using Duolingo. I'd like to say that Duolingo is a fantastic supplement, and for something that's free, it's amazing. It's great for learning new vocabulary, being able to read stories, and also, getting some of this listening practice that you have to pay for. But it's fantastic. We can learn how to use commands, talk about your childhood, use the past tense, all of these kind of grammatical things in a fun, practical way. It's fantastic. Very easy, very nice, clean interface. It is a fantastic supplement. Now, why will Duolingo not make you fluent? Now, once again, we're going off this idea that you can pretty much say whatever you want, whenever you want, when we're talking about fluency. The reason is because you're not actually using the language in the real world like you would in any real life situation, right? Of course, you have to go out and speak and use the language. That is why language exists, so we can communicate and speak to each other, listen to each other, understand each other, share stories, okay? This is kind of the biggest fundamental human aspect of learning language, is to be able to share stories. Hey, I saw a bear over there, look out, or oh, here we can learn a life lesson from this story. You're not going to become fluent by just using a Spanish app. That's the reality. You're going to become fluent in Spanish by speaking. Listening to Spanish is the easiest and most passive way to consume the language and improve your language skills and become fluent. But if you really want to get fluent, you have to be speaking. Now, why is speaking so much better for you than just learning grammar or things like that on a Spanish app? First of all, build your confidence. I know so many Spanish learners who can't even start a conversation with someone, not because they don't know what to say, but it's because they lack the confidence. They're just maybe a shy person, or they feel like, well, my Spanish isn't at a good enough level yet. But that is a bunch of baloney. The only way that you're going to get over that hurdle is by speaking the language, putting yourself out there, maybe looking silly, but the reality is people don't really care. In fact, people appreciate that you are trying to learn their language. Think about someone you know who's maybe trying to learn English. Do you judge them and be like, oh my gosh, dude, you're so dumb, what the heck, blah, 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 blah? Of course not. You're like, hey, it's so cool, let me help you, right? You want to share that experience with that person, not bring them down. So speaking builds your confidence. That is huge. You need to be speaking the language because that's how you use a language, but you need to speak so that you build your confidence. Also, when you're speaking, a lot of times you're gonna have no idea what to say. You're gonna be like, oh gosh, how do I say this? I have no idea. And because of that, the more and more you're speaking, the more and more you're listening to people, you're gonna say, gosh, I hear the phrase así que all the time. What does that mean? Así que, así que, así que. Okay, I'm gonna type that into my translator. By the way, SpanishDict is the best translator by far, totally free. I love it. I still use it to this day. Así que, okay, that means so. Wow, that's great. I learned that because I was speaking. I was putting myself out there. I was consuming and using the language in the real world. Now, another reason that Duolingo probably won't make you fluent is because you lack a real person in real time who can answer your specific questions about Spanish. This is one of the biggest advantages I had taking Spanish classes in high school is because I knew I liked the language, I knew I wanted to learn the language, and I knew that I had a lot of questions in Spanish. One of the biggest reasons that I was one of the more proficient, if not the most proficient student in the class was because I asked so many questions. In order to learn anything to an advanced level, you have to have humility. You have to lose the ego and you have to say, okay, I'm gonna make mistakes, I'm gonna look silly, I don't know everything, and that's okay. That is how you learn. By speaking the language and asking questions, you are going to improve so much, and that is what's going to make you fluent. Unfortunately, with any Spanish learning app, you can't do that. You can't ask your specific questions to a teacher in real time because sometimes you might have a specific question. Hey, how do you use the subjunctive mood? You get the explanation from the teacher, but then that creates new questions, and this is a fantastic way to learn the language. My top 3 language learning apps for Spanish are Duolingo, SpanishDict, it's the best translator, absolutely fantastic, and Anki. Anki is a spaced repetition flashcard system. Fantastic for learning new words and phrases in the Spanish language. You have a toolbox so that when you're speaking in the real world, you'll know more or less what to say. The number one thing, if you want to become fluent in Spanish, please use those learning apps. But the number one thing you need to be doing is speaking with people in real time. Listening is another fantastic supplement. And if you want, I have a Spanish learning playlist of all of my favorite songs in Spanish. It has over like 1,500 followers on Spotify. I'll put the link in the description so you can check it out. And that is really going to help you consuming that media, immersing yourself in the language, becoming a part of the language, having the language be a part of your identity. The reality is we're not gonna become fluent if we're just casually doing our Duolingo lesson for 5 minutes, maybe even like 3 minutes a day. The real way to become fluent is by using the language, speaking with people, listening to people, and immersing yourself in the language, having the language become a part of yourself, become a part of your everyday life. Muchas gracias por ver este video. Si quieres aprender español conmigo, puedes en mi sitio web SpanishWithNate.com. Ahí te enseño cómo hablar un español hermoso. Bueno, muchas gracias, que tengas muy bonito día y estamos hablando. Adiós.